Hello, this is a demonstration of building a quick app in Appster. We have a table in SQL, which is a customer table. It's got 6 records in it. We're going to build a little app that'll give us a list of customers and then let us go add, edit and delete the customers. To do this takes about 10 minutes. So we're going to add a customer application. I'm going to call it customer 2 because that's the name of the database it's in, and we already have a customer here. And then in our customer 2 app, we're going to create a connection to the customer 2 database, and we'll call it customer 2. Okay. So we've got this connection here. Now we're going to add a customers form to show the customers, and the name of the form is customers and the title bar is also customers. And the first thing we're going to do is add a close box to it, a close button, so the users can actually close the form, spell it correctly. And we're going to add a macro to that button. So the macro simply is going to close the form. There's a bunch of different macro step types here you can use, but we're going to close the form. Okay. The last thing our form needs, all forms need, is at least one mode. There's 4 modes a form can be called in, which reflects operations that can be formed to data. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is create a list of customers. So we've added what's called a SQL list view, and to get the data we need to add a query. So our query is going to use our customer 2 connection. The query name is just going to be customers. It returns multiple records from the customer table, hence the plural. And I've prepared a short bit of SQL which returns customers. Okay, so let's stretch this out a bit, and then we're going to set the properties here on the SQL list view. Let's call it SV customers, and we're going to lock it to the right and bottom of the form as well, so it expands with the form. We need to tell it which query to use, and let's set the column sizes. And we want to shrink the customer ID down. It'll still be there, but it's 0 width, so you can't see it. And we're going to change the caption names to make them slightly more user-friendly in a couple of cases. So if we go back here and refresh, that's nice. The last thing we need to do is tell Appster which column is the key column, which is customer ID. It's an identity column, and the data type that's in there, it's recognized it's an integer, but we can choose to treat it differently within the app, and we'll just give it a design time value. The value returned from SQL list view is the value of the selected row in the key column, so the value of the selected row in this. So if we had this row selected, it would be 5. Okay, so we also need to add, edit and delete buttons, because that's things we want to do to customers. So let's create an add button. Command add, command edit, and command delete. Great, let's save that. So we'll close this, and then we're going to go back to our app and edit it and just tell it what the startup form is, so that when you run the app it'll open the customers form in view mode. Okay, so the other form we want to add is customer, but we have a tool to help us with that called Form Wizard. So let's run that. It's picked up our app and Appster server. So we're going to tell it we want to use connection customer 2. You can have multiple connections, and we want to use the customer table. The query name is fine. We just want add, edit and delete view. We don't really mind. Here we indicate the key columns. There's only one, and we want all rows returned. So this is its pro forma version of our form. All of this looks fine to me. We'll make the form a bit wider, and to be honest the margin can be a bit smaller. The margin is the distance to the beginning of the data fields. And we'll click next, save, and done. So now we have a customer form. With half the work done, it's created the layout, but it hasn't put any of the macros in. So what it has done, for instance, is made the fields only enabled in add and edit mode. But obviously if you open it in delete mode, it's added the modes we requested here, enable will evaluate to false. So the first thing we'll do is code up the cancel button. So we're going to code it for all form modes rather than specific ones. You can override all with adding a specific one. So all we're going to do here again is just close the form. The description here will populate automatically if you leave or make it blank. Okay, that's great. So next we're going to get the customer's form to call the customer form appropriately. So let's go into the customer's form. We need to add an edit to the click event to the add button here in either view or all mode. It doesn't matter because we've only got the one mode. And here we're going to open a form, and it's going to be the customer form. We're going to open it in add mode, and this will just pass null through because we're adding a customer, we're not specifying a customer. Okay, after we've added it, we actually the data in the database may well have changed at that point because the customer form might have called a stored procedure to modify it. In fact, it probably will have. So we want to refresh the underlying query, and we want to refresh the list behind SV customers. Okay, that's our add button done. Let's copy these, and we're going to go in and do the same for edit, and then we're just going to paste in these. So again, we want to open a form customer, but we want to open it in edit mode here, and the customer ID is going to be the value from SV customers, which is going to be the value from the key call of the selected row, i.e. the selected customer. The last two can remain the same, they simply just refresh that SQL list view, but we also want to check before we allow the customer to open the form that there is in fact a customer selected, so we're going to add a validation step. Here you add rules, so they're rules to check if a case is true, and if it is, it shows a message and fails the step. So here we want to check to see if an item is selected, and if it's not, we want to show a message and fail the step. So that's the not operator, and here we're getting the is item selected, which is a boolean value from SV customers. So we can put a message to show to the user no customer is selected. Okay, and we want that to happen first. Right, so we'll copy that lot because we can use it for the delete button. So we've now got a macro behind delete, and we want to check if we're deleting customer that a customer is selected, and we're going to open it in delete mode with the same method of getting the customer ID, and again refreshing everything. That's the customer's form completed. Let's have a look at the customer form. Okay, so a few changes we want to make. We'll shrink this down because it's a integer, and we never want it editable because it's a identity column, so we set that to false. We could probably shrink some of the others, but I'm not going to bother. What we do need to do is make the OK button work for our three modes, but we haven't got stored procedures to call yet. So we're going to use the database object creation tool, and what we're doing here is creating insert, update and delete stored procedures for the customer table. So we've selected the customer table here. We want insert, update, delete. This is our key column, We don't have to return the identity parameter, but it might be useful on the insert if you want to use the store procedure from elsewhere. So we do that, and these are our 3 store procedures. Not particularly complex. You can copy the code out, add to it if you want to insert created date times as part of the SQL, or pick up the user's name from system user or whatever, or you can just execute it. So if we go back here, we can now see we should have, yep, we've got insert, update and delete customer. So on our OK button, we want to add an event. So when we click it, we perform certain actions. The first thing we want to do is add a validation step. And the one thing we want is to make sure there's a customer name. So our validation rule is on text customer name. If the customer name is the empty string, we don't want to let the user try and save. We also should add this validation inside the store procedure, but this way we can show a nice message to the user. So we'll put customer name is blank. And you can add multiple steps in there, they just get executed in the order they're shown. We're just going to do customer name for the moment. We're happy with that, so we're going to call the store procedure. We are going to call the insert customer because this is add mode. And then we're going to use the auto match function, which will try and auto match from fields to parameters based on the field name, the column name that the field is populated from the database. So there you go, and we OK that, and we OK that, and then we just want to close the form because we saved the record. So for edit mode, let's copy these, and we're going to respond to the click event in edit mode, and we're going to paste these in. The validation's the same, we still need a customer name. The store procedure though, we want to call update customer, which interestingly has exactly the same parameters. The customer ID can come from the customer ID control, or equally available in the form environment is the customer ID parameter, which is effectively direct rather than go via the data that's then subsequently read in. It doesn't really matter, it'll have the same effect in this instance. So we OK that to save it. That's fine, and then it closes the form, and then let's copy this again, and then the OK button in delete mode. Let's paste those in. None of the fields will be editable, we don't need to perform any validation, and we're going to call delete customer, which just simply takes the customer ID. So the other thing that I failed to show you for update customer is the description needs to change, so we delete it out and it's modified here to delete customer, and we'll do the same for edit because otherwise it's showing an invalid description. You can put whatever description you want in there, but if you leave it blank it'll auto-populate. Okay, let's save that and we'll close it, and then we'll run our app. That's the command line to run the app. And so here's our list of customers. Let's add a customer. Bennett's Fish and Chips, 1 Trinity Street, Weymouth. We don't have a complete address, it's fine. 01234 56790. Okay, so we've got Bennett's in here. Let's pop in a country. Okay, so we basically added and updated a record. Let's delete it out. Super. So the only other thing possibly that I might do at this point is add a double click on the customers. So there's an event on here. Oops. There's an event on the list view which you can pick up the double click event. So if we create that, effectively want it to do the same thing as edit, so we just copy these out, paste them in there, save the app, and then let's execute it again. Okay, so we can now double click and we open up a record. Easy as pie. If you'd like more information or a free download, please go to markster.ltd. The links are in the description below.